Charlotte Wetton is a poet. She's based in West Yorkshire. Her first pamphlets, I Refuse to Turn into a Hat Stand, won the Michael Marks Awards in 2017, following a spoken word album, Body Politic. She won a New Writing North Award in 2019 and has been published in Poetry Wales, Staple and Stand. She's performed at Aldeburgh, Ledbury and took second place at the Stanza Slam. She's currently finishing a Master's in Creative Writing at the University of Manchester and will soon be starting a PhD on working class female poets of the 18th century. I will make sure I share the link as well to Charlotte's website in the chat, so if you want to have a look at more of her poetry, you can do. So Charlotte's going to read a poem which will frame this session, and we'll probably won't have questions at this point, but we'll hopefully return to Charlotte at the end for a longer discussion about her poetry. So over to you, Charlotte.
So thank you very much for that lovely introduction, Kay. My name's Charlotte Wetton, I'm a poet, and I'm really happy to be part of such a unique conference today. Yes, I am starting this PhD in October, so if anyone is interested in the topic of working class 18th century poets, I would love you to get in touch with me. It'd be nice to meet people through this conference as well, doing my bit to reclaim our lost heritage there. But today I'm going to do a performance poem for you. When I saw the call out for abstracts for this conference, I was actually working on this poem at the time, and I immediately felt a connection because this poem looks at how stories are passed on in families, particularly stories about education and getting on in life. And I was interested in how these stories can subtly embed or encode multiple disadvantages in how they're passed on by family members. So the reason I brought this poem to the conference is not because my own family history is so unique or important, but because I would love it if this poem makes people think about their own family stories that have been passed on to them and what more subtle messages or signals might have been encoded into how those stories were told to you. Okay, let's go. My poem is called Silver Service. There's no name for non-rape, for the evening class Nan didn't do, to be a silver service waitress in a smart black dress, sibilant promise of silver service in big hotels in town. It was 8 road crossings, 2 gullies and a stairwell. It was not a nice area, and it was winter. It's how my mother tells it, meaning in this non-story, it was dark, meaning but not saying what that means. Nan went for a time learning all the fancy terms about hollowware and flatware and folding napkins into flowers. But it was not this area. The streetlight out at the corner, a blind bend on the stairs. She walks quick in the dark so no one thinks she's on the game, puffing in the cold, keys spiked in one hand, brolly out in the other, looking over her shoulder, listening for footsteps, for any little sound, heart beating faster to the gully with no lighting. The fancy names going round. Cloches, fishforks, platters, goblets, flutes and creamers. So logically, the ending's preordained in the way my mother tells it. Of course, she gave up silver service. Of course. 4 kids plus no husband plus a packing line wage doesn't equal taxis home. And the non-taxi in this non-story has a name. I now know, as Nan didn't, that universities say intersectionality, which means the crossroads of fucked upness, the point where no one helps you because there's too much going on, gets too much to explain, how there's no word for non-rape, for non-taxi. No word for the point when Nan gets home, hurrying to the safety of the little locked gate, legs aching from the hip down to find 2 kids out of bed, one with a temperature, and thinks, no, I can't keep fighting the fear of the walk and a full shift at work and the worry of the kids waking up and will they be safe by the time I get back, and the dark isn't safe and the kids in the dark and I can't. Of course she gave up silver service. Of course. It's all so logical, the way my mother tells it. It was not a nice area, and it was winter. Meaning, but not saying what that means. Nan makes some hot milk, puts them back to bed, takes the weight off her legs, folds up the black dress. And while she's doing this, that winter night in '66, 4 public schoolboys are unloading the canoes, smoothing out their sleeves, having paddled down the Amazon in brogues. They're guffawing by the boats at the triumph of the trip. Well done, Bertie, good man, Jonty. Now they're planning to break Greenland. What a journey, what a story. 8 road crossings, 2 gullies, and a stairwell. No taxi, no silver service class, no better pay than a packing line, no saving for a rainy day, putting a bit by and getting on. There was no name for the non-rape in my Nan's non-story. At the crossroads of fucked upness, the university is called Intersectionality. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. So powerful, and I think there's something beautiful about poetry and the way that it tells things in words that we can't always use, we can't always find the words for. So that was just a brilliant start to our panel, and we're going to come back to you, I think, if people could hold your words in their mind as we go through the rest of the presentations and the images, and perhaps we'll talk to you a little bit more at the end. Thank you very much. So Charlotte, if we could just spotlight you again, maybe this would be a good chance just to talk to us a little bit more about your poetry, where those ideas come from, what you think about the importance of poetry in terms of foregrounding working class voices.
Right, yeah, thanks, Kay. Yeah, I noticed someone put in a question in the chat about the my idea for the poem, sort of where that inspiration came from. So I'll just start with that specifically, as it's easier, because so many ideas buzzing around my head now from those wonderful presentations. So the memory about the poem came after my gran died a couple of years ago. Me and my mum were talking more about her life, and you know, as you do when someone dies, and kind of reminiscing. And I had heard this story about the silver service class before, that she'd wanted to do this class, and this story came up again as part of our reminiscing together. And one of the themes of those reminiscences we had was how, in most ways, how ordinary my nan's life had been. Predominantly a mother and a housewife and grandmother, but she did work outside the home a lot. And it's really chimes with me the things that people have been saying in the chat about women's jobs being hobbies or not being economically important, despite the fact that my nan, unusually for the era, was a divorced woman, and therefore had to support 4 kids on her own. I actually don't know how she did it. I really don't, because I think the benefit system was probably worse back then for single women. So anyway, so part of this reminiscing of me and my mum was in a way how little there was to reminisce about. My nan hadn't achieved much, you know, when you look at it in black and white, apart from having 4 children, and we sort of struggled to remember stories that she'd told. Like, she'd worked in a cake shop, she'd worked on a factory line, but we struggled to remember a lot of those details because actually they hadn't really been passed down because they were seen as non-important. And the story about the silver service really stuck in my mind because I've found it heartbreaking as an educated university graduate myself how low that ambition was. Like, she wanted to be a waitress, she didn't want to go to university, she didn't want to go to college, she didn't want to get a professional job, she just wanted to be a silver service waitress because it was a better wage than the packing line. And even that was denied her because of her gender, because she couldn't get safely to the class, she couldn't complete that class because she was scared of the walk home. And I've used the word non-story, and some people have picked up in that in the chat, and women's stories are often non-stories because it's about something that doesn't happen. It's also about things that you don't even share with your partner. So I don't, so for example, I was in a pub one night with friends, male and female friends, and the pub started to fill up with more men, just coincidentally. It was a very small pub. more and more men were kind of coming into the pub and less women. And I was then, there was only 2 female customers at that point in the whole pub, and I started to feel really angsty, and I started looking towards the door more and checking. And my partner was like, "What are you looking for?" And he'd noticed my behavior that I hadn't even noticed, because it was a gendered response that was so deeply internalized, it did not occur to me to articulate it, that I was scared of being in a late night alcohol fueled situation where I was in a tiny minority as a woman. And it was so unconscious, and it was just one of those moments that I was like, I need to write more about these moments where you realize your nan has nothing really to show for all those years of work, nothing that is able to be passed down except for a non-story about how she wasn't a silver service waitress. How can I pass that on to my children? Like, so poetry is part of, sorry, this is a really long answer. So poetry is a way of getting under the bonnet of stories, basically, of using that sort of more literary analysis or language tactics and techniques to sort of lift up the bonnet and look at the perceptions and the thing that, like, Jenny's talked about and Emma's talked about, the things that aren't mentioned or aren't talked about. Whereas if you do an ethnographic study and you sit and watch people, or you really interrogate your own family stories, you see what is actually going on behind the scenes. And it's a lot about that intersection of working class and gender that creates double disadvantages, and that those, as I say in my poem, like, I really want the phrase the crossroads of fucked upness to get more currency, because that's what it is. It is much more difficult to help someone with multiple disadvantages in terms of, like, policy or policy change nationally or in a workplace. It's much harder when you've got those multiple disadvantages, which I feel I suffer from much less than my nan did now in my generation. So yeah, we need to kind of keep using all of the tools at our disposal, like academia and poetry, and using that language is another tool that we can use.
It's a brilliant tool, isn't it? And it really elevates, I was going to say elevates the mundane, but it's not the mundane, it's the moments of life, isn't it? Actually, it elevates them and it makes them resonate, and I really love that. So thank you. That's a lovely note to close things on. And I was just wondering, Charlotte, if we want to read more of your poetry, I've put a link to your website, but what's next for you? Have you got some more coming out? Are you going to be performing any online anywhere that we watch?
Oh, not really. I'm doing my dissertation at the moment, so I'm pretty busy with, like, creating new stuff right now. But yeah, I'm hoping to publish more in journals soon.
Brilliant.
But check out the little website I've got, and I post stuff on Twitter sometimes as well.
That's brilliant. Can we read your poem again somewhere? Are you going to put it in the journal, or?
For sure, yeah. I'll try and do a recording and post that up as well.
Oh, we'd love that. Yeah, I really want to hear that again. So thank you so much. Thanks to Charlotte, and thank you to all the panelists and for everyone taking part with the questions and the chat. Sorry that if I didn't get to your questions, but it's been fascinating, and it's given me so much to think about, and very emotional too, very heartfelt stuff. So thank you. I think we're going for a lunch break and reconvene at 1:45. So I hope to see you all then.
Yeah, we are. Thanks, Kay. Thanks, everyone. That was absolutely outstanding. This gets better and better. Now it's break time. We have laid food on, so if you go to the fridge, it's all in there. Sort yourselves out, and we'll see you back at about, well, not about, bang on 1:45, 13:45. Thank you very much, everyone. Pour them out, Jenny. We'll be down in a sec.